If people followed a more healthy lifestyle, the pharmaceutical industry will have nothing to do.
Why do so many Jains consume dairy? Of the 5 Jain values, ahimsa is front and center, such an important aspect. And we know that the dairy industry is cruel.
Well,
So you're co-founder of Sigma Pharmaceuticals, a huge pharmaceutical company in the UK that employs well over 500 people, and your 40 years of contribution to the pharmaceutical world has been recognised with a doctorate from the University of Bath, as well as a CBE, which is a Commander of the Order of the British Empire. But you have reversed your type 2 diabetes, not on pharmaceuticals, but on food.
that totally convinced me to be a vegan. I ate the wrong food. My problem was dairy. There is absolutely no control of what cows are fed with and what milk contains. As a pharmacist, I can tell you now, byproducts of the medication is excreted through the milk. I personally believe this has been the cause of escalation of autoimmune diseases, cancers. So you are now on medicines because you're drinking milk.
Fantastic to be here. Thank you so
Nice
much for
to
your,
meet you,
for your
Klaus, today.
time. This is amazing. The first question is, how did your health journey begin?
It was bad lifestyle. I used to work 18 hours a day, skip lunches, skip breakfast. Meals were very erratic, and I ate the wrong food. What I mean is sweets and things, which most Indian people do. Ultimately, at the age of 30, went to a doctor, he did some tests and said, I'm not yet fully diabetic, but I am pre-diabetic, which gave me a wake-up call. So I changed a little bit of my diet, but my lifestyle was the same, purely because I had just started a retail business and it needed a lot of my attention. It helped me to keep off medication for about 3 years, and then I had to be on medication. Every year, I was put on more and more tablets. At the age of 55, I was put on injections. But again, with my business lifestyle, the doses of my insulin went up and up and up. I'm a pharmacist, and I can tell you I was taking a lot of insulin, and I didn't know what to do. And suddenly, I came across an organization which kind of marketed itself as saying, we can teach reversal of diabetes. I was very hesitant to go there because I said it cannot be reversed. That was how we were taught. I think my wife convinced me to go and listen to this seminar. And honestly, Klaus, half hour into the seminar, I was totally convinced of me taking the wrong diet. And I was so much convinced that I should be a vegan.
This was how many years ago?
Roughly 2015, 10 years ago. This was a Saturday when I attended the seminar. On Sunday, I went to the supermarket and I started my journey on the Monday. Within 2 weeks of starting the vegan diet, my medication, my insulin went less than half dose, what I was taking when I attended the seminar. I then went to the doctor and told him, obviously he didn't believe me, but he said, well, look, if it's worked, it's good. Because for some reason, most medics don't believe in diet, especially veganism. They do believe in diet for weight loss, other things, but not in vegan diet. Anyway, he measured my blood pressure and other things, and suddenly my blood pressure was too low. So he asked me to reduce my blood pressure tablets. Within 3 weeks of this seminar, I was on less than half the dose of insulin, and I was on almost half the dose of the tablets I took.
And your blood sugar after a year or two?
I was 7 before with double the dose of medication. After being vegan for 3 weeks, I am 7 with half my medication.
Wow.
That totally convinced me to be a vegan. It also taught me, which I suddenly realized, that milk, which is a very powerful addictive substance, became a non-vegetarian product because the way milk is produced, it's a lot of stress, a lot of inhumanity to animals. It's almost killing animals.
And it's not designed for the human body. It's designed to make a calf grow from 60 pounds to 600 pounds in less than 10 months.
Agreed. I mean, it's not natural for one species to drink other species' milk. I mean, you would never find a cow going to a goat to drink milk. We unusually are the only species in the world that drink other species' milk. You ask anybody, why do you drink milk? It gives me energy and it's for calcium. This is such powerful marketing by the milk, the dairy industry, but they never tell you that the amount of calcium in a glass of milk is probably as much as in a flower of broccoli or a handful of vegetables. So this idea of drinking milk for calcium is so false. And basically, you are drinking fat and sugar, which makes you addicted to milk. The other thing is, when somebody realizes how milk is produced by the dairy industry, it's so inhumane because every human being knows the mother will only give milk after childbirth and only gives milk for a year or so until the child grows and starts eating. In case of cows, it's artificially inseminated, which psychologically must be very stressful. Hormones, a lot of chemicals.
Antibiotics.
Well, antibiotics because cows get infected with others being used 24/7. The calf is taken away straight away, possibly gone to the slaughterhouse to be sold as veal. Now, can you imagine a mother, how stressed she would be if the baby is taken away after childbirth and never shown to the mother? We know as pharmacists, when you give any medication to a pregnant mother, byproducts of the medication is excreted through the milk. But in cows, there is no control. In dairy, there is absolutely no control of what cows are fed with and what milk contains.
It's amazing to get a pharmacist's perspective on that because there's so many ways you can talk about the dairy industry and explain why it's cruel, why it's unethical, why it's bad for the environment, bad for health. 65% of the global population are lactose intolerant. But it's really interesting getting the take about the hormones and antibiotics in the secretions that we're, as humans, consuming.
We were told by this seminar that one of the byproducts of hormones that is excreted in cow's milk is they called it IGF, insulin growth factor, for some reason, and I think is well documented. This byproduct chemically looks almost the same as insulin. So when you drink milk, the IGF, which looks like insulin, cheats the body, and the body thinks that, we've got insulin in the blood, but it's not insulin, it's IGF. So what happens is your body's cells are covered with this IGF. So when you eat sugar, your body produces insulin, your pancreas is still active, but your insulin doesn't work because all the body receptors that would have taken insulin is occupied by IGF.
Yeah, right. This is where the diabetes comes in.
So what do doctors do? You got diabetes, now I'm going to give you some tablets. So you are now on medicines because you're drinking milk. The day I became vegan, I wasn't taking any IGF. My body cells work better with the medication I took because I didn't need that much medication. everything became very efficient. My problem was dairy. The meat industry is just as bad as dairy. For beef, they want cows to grow faster. To do that, they give them hormones and medication. As a pharmacist, I can tell you now, there are a lot of medicines which have side effects, and the side effects are because get retained in the blood, in the body, and it's very difficult to get rid of them from the body. They will probably be there for the rest of your life, or they'll go out very slowly. The classic examples of this kind of activity is something like lead and mercury. I mean, we have little traces of lead and mercury in air because of petrol or whatever. But it is very little, but it's accumulating in our body. But if you took a lot more of those things, it'll stay there and it'll be a poison. Now, where I'm getting to is people eat meat. There is very little control of what the meat contains. The meat will contain remnants, byproducts of hormones, medicines that the animals have been given. I personally believe that this has been the cause of escalation of some diseases which were not known probably 30 years ago, 20 years ago, cancers, autoimmune diseases.
Why do you think the medical or pharmaceutical model doesn't incorporate this message of lifestyle medicine?
We live in a commercial world, and it's the lobbying which is more powerful than the outcome. These people whose seminar I attended is an organization called Sharon in India. Because I was so successful, I actually sponsored them to come to UK. I got in touch with Department of Health because I told them, I said, the budget for diabetes is, well, the NHS spends well over 10 billion pounds a year on diabetes as an illness. Even if I'm able to convince 0.5% of the population of veganism and diabetes, the savings could be tremendous. Honestly, Klaus, I had no response from the Department of Health. I then went to Diabetes UK, which is a very big organization in UK. It's the most well-known diabetic organization. And they even ignored my call when they decided not to send anybody to any of my seminars.
Why is that? It's like going back to what you said before, we live in a commercial world, right?
Correct. In terms of Department of Health, I think it's the government and there is a lot of lobbying with food industry, etc. In terms of Diabetes UK, I think it is, they didn't want to then divert their mind to veganism because they were already working on something which was totally against veganism.
Low carb.
Low carb.
Why does low carb get results for some people? Is it a case of it just addressing the symptom and not the underlying cause of type 2 diabetes?
I think you're totally right. As a pharmacist, I cannot understand how a low carb, high fat diet would work. Like everything else, body, once you give it a little shock, it reacts differently.
How does it feel being somebody who's been so successful in the pharmaceutical industry, knowing that a main part of the solution is in a way the opposite of what you're doing, where we are today in the lab, your background as a pharmacist?
It's a personal thing that I've become vegan because I care about my health. But I am absolutely sure with the amount of marketing that goes around, for every one diabetic that reverses his condition or her condition, there'll be another 10. So I don't think my demand for medicines will ever go, because the marketing of food, drinks, medicines is such. We'll not have a population 100% healthy. But on a personal basis, it's how you choose to live.
Would you be willing to lose your business for the world to go vegan?
Well, put it this way, I'm a businessman and I definitely know that I won't lose the business because there'll be more people with illnesses that are coming along. But what I would like to see is less stress on the NHS, and I would like to see people living healthier, longer, and better.
How many people do you employ?
My company employs 500 people.
Wow.
Sigma Pharmaceuticals, a company was formed in the 1981-82. We had a small place down the road from here, only about 2,000 square foot place. So 4 of us basically running the show. The first year, the turnover of the company was £1 million, the first year. Sigma now distributes to about 2,000 pharmacies in London. The turnover is about 280 million.
280 million a year. Wow.
And Sigma sells to hospitals, to pharmacies, and to clinics. We employ about 500 people, as we discussed earlier.
Would you give them a bonus if they all adopted a plant-based diet?
Honestly, I've never thought of it. I'll put it to them, but I doubt if there will be, because I think from what I know, the kind of culture of my staff, I think about out of 500, only about 50 are vegetarians. But I've never thought of incentivizing the others to become vegan or the vegetarians to be vegan. And I think I should do it because I know almost 25% of my staff take tablets associated with diabetes. That's a really good idea to incentivize them. I'll give it a go.
There's this book by Dr. Michael Greger, and he talks for one whole chapter about why the medical model and the pharmaceutical model don't incorporate lifestyle or preventative medicine. Do you think it's more a lack of integrity and profit making, or do you think it's just a lack of understanding of the power of diet and lifestyle?
I think a combination of both, actually. The way the pharmaceutical industry works is it's more focused on innovating new medicines. It's a catch-22. Because of the bad lifestyle, you get more illnesses, different type of illnesses, and the pharmaceutical industry is continuously occupying itself in curing these diseases. And you're right, Klaus. If people followed a more healthy lifestyle, the pharmaceutical industry will have nothing to do.
You said overall you don't live the healthiest lifestyle, haven't lived the healthiest lifestyle in terms of, you don't do the golf, you don't do the tens of thousands of steps of walking a day, you don't go to the gym. But when you were 65 years old, you adopted a whole food plant-based diet. And that's the thing that keeps you looking so healthy.
Changing into the plant-based diet changed my lifestyle. I was very lethargic. I used to eat more to just keep awake and keep active. Being vegan, one thing it's done is I'm much more active mentally, because one of the things I learned from those seminars was some of those byproducts in milk affect your brain. They actually occupy some of the sensors in your brain, which makes you lethargic. And one of the best outcome out of being vegan was more active. At my age now, 75 plus, I don't have signs of arthritis and although I don't go to gym, I can definitely walk miles and miles.
You're a Jain.
Correct.
Have you found any overlap between Jain values and the ethics of veganism?
Absolutely. Jain values teach non-violence, ahimsa. Being vegan, I feel I've gone one step further in this journey of ahimsa. I have been a Jain since I was born, but I have taken more interest in Jain philosophy now.
Why do so many Jains consume dairy? This is something that's confused me for a long time. Of the 5 Jain values, ahimsa is front and center, such an important aspect. And we know that the dairy industry is cruel.
It's because dairy products, milk, ghee, etc. are part of rituals. So once they are part of rituals, it's very difficult to teach somebody that you can't have it. We need a really good, modern, spiritual leader who can bring the Jain religion to the 21st century.
So what would that look like? Because obviously the Jain values are ahimsa, non-violence, satya, which is truth, asteya, not stealing, being faithful, and the fifth one is basically minimalism. So how do we take those ancient roots and bring it to the 21st century?
They are all very good values. They are actually the way of life now. But they should be taught in a practical way. We as Jains get too consumed into rituals. A lot of the rituals we do have been set in times long time ago. And we need a guru who can come and bring it to the current times. But one thing is true, Klaus, many Jains, because of the values that you've just outlined, have been very successful in business because they will not cheat, they will not do some things that will not agree with their principles, they'll be very compassionate, they will help others. I mean, that in a true Jain is always there, helping others.
I mean, you've been very successful in business as well. Would you attribute that to sticking to your Jain values?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that being compassionate, friendly, truth, etc., has helped me. But the main thing that I have deviated from Jainism is I do not believe in other, but I do visit all denomination of religions. I would go very happily and pray my Jain prayers in a church, in a synagogue, in a mosque, or in any place of worship. I would go and visit it, respect it, but I would say my own Jain prayers in those. That's where I believe. And somebody did ask me, saying, what religion do you follow? And I do tell people, I am a Jain, but my main religion is good heart. Be good to others, and if you can't do good, don't do anything bad.
So if any Jain person is watching this video and they were interested in becoming vegan, what message would you have for them?
For anybody who is a Jain and wants to turn vegan, please look into how dairy is produced. Once you see how cruelly milk is produced, I'd be surprised as a Jain, you would not change to a plant-based diet. Your body will change immediately. You'll feel very active. If you're obese, I'll assure you, on a plant-based diet, you will lose a few kilos within 6 to 8 weeks without any medication. By being on a plant-based diet, I am certain people will take less medicines and will be better for the NHS, for the healthcare industry, and I think the pharmaceutical industry will still keep on innovating things, but they can divert their innovation into other areas. How to keep people alive for longer time, how to keep them healthy, etc.
Dr. Dean Ornish in the US believes that 80% of healthcare costs could be saved if the population of the US adopted the lifestyle he recommends, which is love more, stress less, do a little bit of exercise and adopt a plant-based diet. Do you agree?
Adopting a plant-based diet will certainly help people with what I would call a healthy lifestyle, less stress, more energy, etc.
And lastly, what's your message to the world?
Please learn about Jain philosophy and the way of life. One of the things you will definitely learn is compassionate vegetarianism, the advantages of things like yoga and spiritual awareness. One of the things that has come out of my life as a Jain is a very compassionate way of life.